Mother Bear asked the hunter for help, risking her life to save her cub. A lone hunter trudged through the wilderness, his rifle slung over his back. Every step crunched against the snow as his sharp eyes scanned the endless white expanse. Food was scarce, and he had no choice but to venture deeper into the forest. Then it happened. A faint rustling broke the stillness. The hunter froze, his pulse quickening. He tightened his grip on the rifle and crouched low, his breath forming clouds in the icy air. Was it prey? A deer, perhaps? The rustling grew louder. Slowly he turned toward the sound. His heart skipped a beat. It wasn't prey. Emerging from the shadows of the trees was a massive mother bear. Her fur was streaked with blood, and her movements were slow but deliberate. The hunter's instinct screamed at him to run or aim his rifle, but something stopped him. The bear wasn't attacking. She wasn't growling in rage. Instead, she looked desperate. Her deep brown eyes locked onto his, pleading. She let out a low growl, not threatening, but filled with pain. The hunter stood frozen in shock. What was she trying to tell him? The hunter wasn't a stranger to the forest. He had grown up near its edge where his family lived in a small, weathered cabin. His father had taught him to hunt, not for sport, but for survival. Now, years later, the hunter found himself following those same lessons as he ventured deep into the wilderness. This winter was particularly harsh. Food was scarce, and the snow showed no signs of relenting. He had a family waiting for him back home, his wife and their young son, and the thought of returning empty-handed gnawed at him. But despite his experience, there was one creature that haunted his memories: bears. As a boy, he had wandered too far from the cabin one summer and stumbled upon a bear near the river. The beast had reared up, roaring with primal fury, and the boy had frozen in terror. He had escaped that day, but the memory of those massive claws and the raw power of the animal stayed with him. Even now, the sight of a bear sent a shiver down his spine, and yet this bear was different. As she limped closer, the hunter noticed her ragged appearance. Her fur was matted with blood on her flank, her movements sluggish, and her breath labored. Her growls were low and soft, almost pleading. She seemed to be in pain, but there was no aggression in her stance. Instead, her eyes darted between the hunter and the forest behind her, as if she was trying to communicate something. The hunter didn't move, his instincts warring within him. She was clearly injured, but the way she kept glancing back suggested urgency, even desperation. What could possibly drive a creature as powerful as a bear to behave this way? Against his better judgment, he decided to follow her. The hunter's heart pounded as the bear turned her head and let out another low growl. But it wasn't the roar of a predator. It was softer, almost pleading. Slowly, she began to retreat, her massive paws crunching the snow. Every few steps, she stopped, turned back, and locked eyes with him. Her gaze was desperate, almost begging. Instinct screamed at the hunter to run or raise his rifle. This was a bear, a creature of raw power capable of tearing him apart in seconds. But something about her behavior held him in place. She wasn't acting like a predator. She wasn't threatening him. Instead, it was as if she was asking for help. His grip tightened on the rifle, his knuckles white against the cold metal. "This is insane," he muttered under his breath. She could attack any moment. But his feet didn't move away. The conflict within him was almost unbearable. Was this some kind of trap? Was she leading him into danger? Or was there truly something she needed him to see? The bear let out another soft growl and moved further into the forest, limping as she went. She glanced back one last time, her eyes filled with urgency. The hunter swallowed hard. Against every instinct, he decided to follow. Step by cautious step, he trudged through the snow, his weapon ready in case things went wrong. The forest grew darker and quieter as the trees thickened around him. His breath came in shallow puffs, his ears straining for any sound that might signal danger. The bear led him to a rocky slope where a hidden cave lay, partially obscured by branches. She stopped at the entrance, growling anxiously and pacing back and forth. Her eyes darted from the hunter to the cave, as if urging him to look inside. The hunter's pulse raced, his mind reeled with possibilities. What was in there? A predator? A trap? Or something else entirely? He hesitated at the entrance, his fingers tightening on the rifle. But the bear didn't move to attack. Instead, she lowered her head, whimpering softly. Whatever was in that cave, it was important enough for her to risk everything, including her life, to bring him here. The hunter hesitated at the mouth of the cave, his breath coming in shallow gasps. The bear stood just a few feet away, pacing anxiously, her growls low and constant. The air was thick with tension, the kind that made every instinct in his body scream at him to turn back. But he couldn't ignore her desperation. Whatever was in that cave, she was guarding it with her life. Slowly he stepped inside, his rifle gripped tightly in one hand. The cave was dark and cold, the faint smell of damp earth mingling with something else, something musky and alive. His eyes adjusted to the dim light filtering through the entrance, and that's when he saw it. In the corner of the cave, partially obscured by debris, was a small bear cub. Its fur was matted, and its tiny body trembled with exhaustion. A fallen tree trunk pinned its back legs, and it let out weak, pitiful whimpers. The hunter's heart clenched. The cub was alive but clearly in pain, unable to free itself. As he took a cautious step closer, the mother bear let out a loud growl behind him. He froze, his pulse racing. Her massive frame filled the cave's entrance, her eyes locked on him. She wasn't attacking, but her warning was clear. Any wrong move, and she wouldn't hesitate. The hunter took a deep breath and slowly crouched down, keeping his movements deliberate and non-threatening. He glanced back at the bear. "I'm trying to help," he murmured, his voice steady but quiet. She didn't move, but her growls softened, as if she understood. With careful hands, he began to lift the tree trunk. It was heavier than he expected, and the cold made his fingers ache. But he didn't stop. The cub let out a sharp cry, and the mother bear growled louder, her body tensing. Sweat trickled down the hunter's temple despite the freezing air. Finally, with one last heave, the trunk rolled off the cub. The small bear scrambled free, whimpering as it hobbled toward its mother. The hunter stepped back quickly, giving them space. The mother bear nuzzled her cub, her growls turning into soft grunts of reassurance. But now they were both vulnerable. An injured cub and an exhausted mother in the heart of a dangerous forest. The hunter felt an unexpected pang of responsibility. He had saved them, but their struggle for survival was far from over. The hunter stepped back, his hands trembling as the weight of the moment settled over him. The mother bear lowered her head, gently nudging her cub, who let out a soft, whimpering sound before pressing itself against her side. For a moment, the cave was filled with nothing but the quiet sounds of the bear comforting her cub. Then something unexpected happened. The mother bear turned her gaze toward the hunter. Her eyes, which had been filled with desperation and tension moments ago, now held something different. Calm, maybe even gratitude. She didn't growl or lunge. Instead, she stood still, her massive body shielding her cub, but her gaze lingered on him. It was as though, in her own way, she was acknowledging what he had done. The hunter swallowed hard, the weight of her silent gesture hitting him in ways he hadn't anticipated. He had always thought of bears as fearsome predators, symbols of raw power and danger. Yet here she was, a creature driven not by aggression, but by the fierce, selfless love of a mother willing to risk everything for her child. As the hunter backed out of the cave, the bear didn't move to stop him. Instead, she turned her attention fully to her cub, licking its fur and inspecting it for injuries. He stood at the cave entrance for a moment, staring at the pair. The forest seemed different now, less hostile, more alive. He tightened his grip on his rifle, but then lowered it. Hunting suddenly felt wrong. He had come into the forest to take a life, yet he had just saved two. The thought of killing, of undoing what had just happened, felt like a betrayal. The trek back home was slow and quiet. As he trudged through the snow, he replayed the encounter in his mind. The desperation in the bear's eyes, the trust she had shown him, and the fragile bond they had shared in that fleeting moment. When he finally reached his cabin, he stepped inside to the warmth of a fire and the curious eyes of his wife and son. He told them the story, not of a hunt, but of a mother bear's bravery, a cub's innocence, and the fragile trust between man and beast. "That day," he said softly, staring into the flames, "I realized something. Even the fiercest creatures can show vulnerability when it comes to protecting the ones they love. This story reminds us that even in the harshest of circumstances, unexpected bonds can form between humans and animals. It's a testament to the power of trust, compassion, and the lengths a mother will go to protect her child. Moments like these remind us of the beauty and depth of the natural world. Have you ever witnessed an animal showing such incredible trust or bravery? We'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this tale touched your heart, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories of survival, courage, and connection.